episode, if you will, of Help for a Hurting World. And we put this together especially for seniors. But I think people across the age spectrum can benefit from and enjoy our discussion this afternoon. And that's exactly what it's going to be, just a discussion. Our focus is going to be of redeeming the time. Joining me this afternoon is our four dynamic seniors: Dale Barrett, Cecily Patty, Emily Head, and Bill Ziegler. To start, and I'm Al Streeter. To start things off, I'd like you to meet each of our panelists and find out a little bit about each one. And let's go in the order that I introduced you. So Dale, you're up first.
Thanks, Al. It's a real privilege to get to share in this way. I am Dale Barrett, and I have been in this area for about 7 years. We retired, my wife and I retired here because we were drawn by the magnetic pull of 8 grandchildren who live in this vicinity. So we enjoy being full-time grandparents. I am a retired minister. I was a pastor for 46 years, and now I run a counseling business here in San Luis Obispo. But it's a delight to be able to join my friends in sharing with you today.
Cecily.
And I'm Cecily Patty, and I've lived here about 40 years. And I'm married to David, and I have 2 married grown children. And I also have my mom, who is almost 90, Marion, and have gone to Grace Church about 40 years.
Emily.
I'm Emily Head. I moved here to the area in about 4 years ago, and met my husband though at Cal Poly and always had intended to return. And we have one of our kids live here, and they have 3 kids now. A newly born little one about 5 weeks ago. So, and I do kids coordinator for North County campus, and I'm on the care team, physical care team during this time.
Bill.
Thank you, Al. My wife and I have lived on the Central Coast for approximately 15 years. We have 3 beautiful daughters and 3 godly sons-in-law and 10 grandchildren. So I echo what Dale said, is the reason we're here is because 3 of my grandchildren live in San Luis Obispo. Both my wife and I were teachers in Madison, Wisconsin before our move to California. My wife is a reading specialist, and I taught physics and chemistry. While in Madison, I served as a music and choral director at the church we attended. One of my hobbies is playing sax, and I do that pretty regularly on the beach in Avila, so you can all come out and join me.
You're still doing it?
Not officially.
All right, and I'm Al Streeter. I've been here come June 1st. I'll be here 28 years on the Central Coast, and I'm the adult and missions pastor here at Grace. Involved in music here in the church, but also in the community. My wife and I are involved in various performing groups around the Central Coast. So this august panel this afternoon, we're going to be talking about things related to being sheltered in place for 2 months. Yes, it's been 2 months. And so we thought that, one group that is really affected going forward. I mean, we're starting to open up little by on a snail's pace, but even as we begin to open up, there's a whole group of people that are going to be pretty slow to re-engaging with things. And those are seniors and people that are at risk health-wise. And so we thought that this was a good time to kind of get together and talk about some of the things that, the feelings that we're having, how we're processing this, and in a practical way, how we can redeem the time. I mean, if we're still going to be sheltered in place for weeks or even a couple of months, how can we make the most of our time? And I think this group here has got some great insight into how we can do that well and really honor the Lord in the way, even in being sheltered in place. First question that I kind of wanted to throw out to everybody is we're all in that category of seniors. So what has been the greatest challenge for you or challenges for you since that shelter in place was given 2 months ago? And so I'm going to throw it out to Bill. How about you start us off here?
Thank you, Al. My background picture here shows a nice tranquil lake scene taken from the living room of our cottage in northern Wisconsin. This summer, we probably will not be able to visit northern Wisconsin. This is just a way of saying that this challenges me because I'm not too good. I don't adapt well to changes and being flexible. So that's a big challenge for me. I also need, as a husband and a father and a grandfather, to be sensitive to the changes that my wife and children have at this time. So those are my challenges.
I'm really missing friends, and I'm missing being able to go to church and to teach Sunday school in person. I'm missing traveling. We had travel plans also, Bill, and I'm sad because we won't be able to do those. And I'm kind of missing going out to eat in a restaurant.
I think for me, it's a lot of those things. I think maybe with the common maladies of us as we get older is our resistance to change. I kind of agree with you, Bill, that that's a tough one. I think we like the regimen of our life, a certain amount of predictability about that. And that's sort of been taken away from us. I mean, we're sort of living on the edge of wondering, how long will this go on? And, what are the incremental steps of re-entering the real world that will be open to us? And I think that creates for us a lot of uncertainty. And so I would say that's the biggest thing for me. I'm like Cecily, I'm a real people person. I miss hugging my friends and sitting together over a meal. I'm a counselor. I miss seeing my clients across the desk, even though I see them virtually on screen. So yeah, it's a huge adjustment, and I've sort of been doing it kicking and screaming, but now we've been doing it for a while, so sort of getting acclimated to it.
Yeah.
How about you, Emily?
It's many of those things. Definitely physical closeness, even when we maybe have had a socially distanced family time. It's just so hard not to want to hug and, and in my case, with a newborn grandbaby, hold her. I've held her once since she was born, and that I have that memory to be thankful. I have lots to be thankful for. She's born healthy, mom's healthy, and they're doing well. But yes, I definitely miss holding that little one close and just family and friends.
Yeah, we were planning to go to Disneyland with our North Carolina kid and his family. Paul was supposed to come out, our two little granddaughters and Shawnee, and we were going to spend 10 days together and go down to Disneyland. And of course, that was in April, and that never happened. So that was a real disappointment. Something musically, and both Tanya and I had all kinds of concerts, and Tanya has a string quartet that had a number of weddings planned, and all of those things went by the wayside. So it's been just, it's not the same thing sitting in the back room practicing scales. Be much more fun to be out playing a concert. So it's been a challenge that way for us, for sure. So go ahead.
I was just going to say, one of the things that I do in my spare time is I teach children at Sunday school, but also in Bible study fellowship. And so I really miss teaching in person with those children. And for Bible Study Fellowship, I had to be videoed, and that just feels really intimidating. So different than being with the children and having them right there. But those were some big challenges for me, is even just learning the technology to be able to do that.
Yeah.
But I did learn it, so.
Yeah, good for you. Yeah. So with all of this, is there a particular, is there one emotion that you could that expresses your feelings, or maybe it's been a range of what is it, those 5 things that happen when you go through a crisis? Maybe it's that, but maybe there's one emotion that particularly characterizes how you felt about this whole thing.
I would, Al, I would choose the word frustration, and I would use it in a particular sense. I think we have probably more time to watch television, and maybe we're more engaged in the news, and that can be a very frustrating exercise, I think, because of the polarization on the political scene, which, regardless of which side of the aisle you sit on, we have, very differing views. I had kind of hoped that during this season of sort of national tragedy that we would be more linked and yoked together. But it seems like there's almost been an acceleration of animus and anger. And that's been disappointing and frustrating to me in my quest to find out what the truth is. What should we believe to be true? And depending on which network you look at, it's almost like we're living in different worlds. So I think that creates for all of us a sort of a sense of frustration. I don't think that's just peculiar to our age, but because of our access to TV and maybe more discretionary time, it can be an accelerated source of frustration for us.
I think mine is, I always struggle with expectation as it is. I get this idea in my mind, okay, this is how it's going to look for a while, and then things will get figured out, and then we'll be back to what it was. And so the longer we get in this, I realize, okay, you have to just leave, your sense of how you're looking at this, your expectations. And basically that leads to trying to be patient in the process, if you will. So impatience is a big part of it for me too.
Yeah.
Emily, I feel the same way. My biggest emotion is impatience.
Mm-hmm.
I do not have a strict schedule, but I want to have the freedom to do things I want to do and express my feelings. I don't like wearing a mask. I'm very social and love to be with people. I don't like feelings of isolation by standing 6 feet away from them. And so it's almost, I'm getting a tape measure out each time I'm out in public. So that's a real, I have an impatience about that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a planner. And so for me, my plans have certainly been dashed, and I kind of live for what's coming. And I think that there's a frustration for me in not being able to plan and know, okay, well, in the future, we're going to do this, because we don't know quite what that looks like.
Sounds like frustration and impatience seem to carry the day here, and requiring patience. Yes, Emily, I think we all need a dose of that for sure. So, I mean, those are 2 emotions. I think that I actually expected to hear more variety. I'm a little surprised that we're all feeling so much the same thing there. Maybe for different reasons, but similar emotions. What are some of the other emotions and I don't know, the feelings that come out of it? What else do you think people are feeling out there these days?
Well, I think particularly people that in general, their mobility, they can't get out, or loved ones usually come to them, or health issues, or we've all had our moments of loneliness. But I really feel for people that don't have family that are able to even come into where they live and visit them. You know, there's people at assisted and care facilities, rehabs. You know, that's a huge deal, is to have that social interaction. So,
And you have a lot of experience in that in that field, so you know that well.
yeah, I have a lot of people I care about at Garden Creek. So,
Yeah.
assisted living.
I think there's a lot of anger out there, and anger has sort of a contagious effect. You can get caught up in the anger at the government, anger at the local officials, for shutting us down and denying us our freedom. However, people are siding with that issue. There's a lot of anger. I think also there is a certain amount of fear, and the fear of will my retirement all go away? Because we're seeing a lot of undulations in the stock market. Will I be able to handle the responsibilities that are changing because of the circumstances I'm in? I think there's a fear, and I think there's a little bit of fear for a while about whether if I had an illness other than something affiliated with the virus, would be able to get the medical care that I needed. We're aware of a couple circumstances like that. So I think there's this underlying fear that's created by sort of the uncertainty about the time in which we're living.
I think there's definitely a loss of independence for people that normally, even if they're elderly, we're able to go out, we're able to go to the grocery store, we're able to get their hair done, we're able to go get their nails done, whatever it is. Those things are not there anymore, and there's kind of a loss of independence for them. They are depending then on other people to buy their groceries for them and to, take care of things that they would normally have been able to do. So there's a loss of independence.
My wife, along with other individuals from Grace Church, have actively visited elderly folks who have been confined to nursing homes in San Luis Obispo, and she has not been able to physically be with them during this time, but has remained in communication with them, like Emily, by means of letters and the phone, and of course, that Emily being there. One of the ladies phoned her recently and was very distraught because she needed to see a doctor and was worried and fearful that one would not be available. And my wife had just the opportunity to listen to her, and I think that's probably the most important thing. She listens, and she was able to provide comfort and assurance. Another feeling I think that people have is, especially people that are confined, are uselessness. And I would strongly urge that no one should feel useless or allow others to marginalize them. I feel that God sees each of us, and we are all precious to him individually.
And I would just add to the loss of independence, the heightened feeling of dependence.
Yes.
That's one of the things we relinquish reluctantly the older we get. Is there's a sense of independence being equated with our sense of personal self-worth and dignity. And we have to surrender that to someone to drive us somewhere, or to pick up things for us, or do things that we've been accustomed to do for ourselves. That in and of itself is an incredibly difficult adjustment. And some of that is almost coerced on us today, or some of us today, because of the directives. For a while, I laugh because when they started to tell us to shelter in, we live on a property with my son, and he was determined that we were not going to go to Costco. We were not going to get to our groceries. They were going to do that ourselves. Now we've negotiated a truce about that. But there is this sense of dependence that we have to wrestle with, because we're proud and we really want to be able to take care of ourselves. And this is a common thing that I'm hearing with the people that I visit with. This surrender of of independence and becoming more dependent is not easy.
Yeah. So, Bill, you started, you kind of launched into this, but how can we counter the feelings from this isolation and these feelings? What are other ways that we can kind of counteract those feelings?
Well, I strongly feel that that every morning well, my wife and I try to do this. We like to focus on activities that allow us to be spiritually, mentally, and physically active. And spiritually through our devotions and fellowshipping on Zoom and phone, and showing love and concern to those around us who are not yet believers. And physically I do some light stretching exercise, and we're blessed because we can walk regularly to the beach. And then mentally, I've been really thinking a lot about this, using the time to do things that we never seem to have time to do. When I was young, mom and dad made certain that their children took piano lessons. I was too smart and too lazy to practice. And so I lived for 70 years jealously admiring pianists like Becky. Now I'm starting to practice each day, not because I'll ever play for anyone, certainly not Al, but for my mental stability. My wife loves to be outdoors and started a herb garden. And I realize that everybody copes differently. And some things are not possible for each person. But I would just recommend for your thought process to look for things that are spiritual, that you can do, physical and mental. And I think that will go a long way to help you plan your day. Those are my ideas.
Great.
So how have some of you others kind of counteracted your own feelings?
I really admire my mom because she's just she's almost 90, and yet she has done so many important things. And I know she reads her Bible every day. That's just a given. And but she also prays for people on her Christmas list. So
Wow.
if she's got you on her Christmas list, each day she prays for just one of the people. And they've done that for years, so that's not really something new. But she also, I think she's been adding in calling those people. And so some of them live in Michigan and other places. So she's been really, and then she has a phone ministry. So she calls people real regularly, her sisters especially. But I think she's, instead of sitting there feeling sorry for herself, she's reaching out to people and interacting with them. And it's good for her, but it's also good for those other people too.
Right. The calls are important. Al and I are blessed with our job assignments. We get to call people and check in on them and make sure their needs are being met and nobody's falling through the cracks. And just the interaction with people. Some people I've never met. It's just been a blessing to be able to get to know people that way. So definitely, whether you can get out or not, just reaching out via phone really makes a difference to people. And for me personally, one thing I've tried to step up is snail mail. I've just been sending note cards or little notes to people because we all love getting mail in this, the old-fashioned way. So, and I just think it helps brighten people's day. And I'm laughing because it has been funny and I know all of us making care calls did find that the people that, are a little bit vulnerable and have to stay in, they want to get out and help, so there's so many ways to help. And like Bill, I don't know, Bill, we haven't talked about this yet, so I don't want to take away your thing, but the praying for people like your mom does, Cecily, and Bill, you head up that team. So that's.
Yeah, we're going to flesh some of that out a little bit more here in a few minutes.
I wanted to say, sort of from a counseling vantage point, I would just say this, that the two feeders of depression are isolation and inactivity. So if you're feeling down, the natural inclination can be, I'm just going to go to the bedroom, pull the covers over my head and sleep the rest of the day. Well, those things really perpetuate depression, perpetuate feeling down. So a lot of the things we've talked about are really counter to isolation and inactivity. So this whole idea of engaging, Beverly and I even, we're blessed that we like being together. We like the protracted time together. And we have a dozen different games that we take turns playing. If we're a little bored, we play a little rummy or phase 10 or Yahtzee. I mean, not the most mentally challenging games, but they're fun and they sort of distract us. They're really a good thing for us to do. I think inactivity is the other thing, and I know that our physical needs may limit us and define us, but one of the rules for people who are depressed is to change position. Get up from where you are, move to another room, sit outside, take a walk if you can do that. But those things are pretty basic to fighting against maybe feelings of being down and forgotten, and instead not isolating, reaching out, engaging, and doing something that changes position and creates some activity in your life. I think even within the confines of your home, those are healthy antidotes to depression.
Yeah, I really like Emily, the idea that you've got time, write notes and send cards to people. That's great. Bill, that'd be a great thing for all of us. It's like, okay, what is something that I wish that I had done, but never had time or never was motivated to do, and to do it. I want to hear you play some piano here at some point.
Not likely.
Chopsticks.
But I was thinking about, Pastor mentioned journaling, keeping a diary, or photography. And I think photography is really a fun thing to get out and to look at birds and do photography around this beautiful countryside we're in, and then take the pictures home, and they bring in such wonderful memories. That's just good for our brains. Keep our brains active. So I just think there are a lot of ideas about that. But to think about things that you could never do because you were too busy with a job.
I have a 65-year-old friend who told me that for the first time in his life, he is cooking. His
Right.
wife has done all the cooking, and he has bought a cookbook, and he cooks 2 nights a week now.
Wow.
This is his newfound direction of energy and creativity. And they're both still standing and alive, so apparently it hasn't been a great peril, but he's really enjoying this as a new thing in his life.
We obviously, lots of people have been doing this, but we have been going around through the house and cleaning different parts of the house, so different closets, different drawers, cupboards with craft stuff and all kinds of things like that. And I again had felt too busy before to do that, and so I really just decided that I needed to do that, and I made a list. So I wasn't doing it all in one day, and I didn't do it many days in a row because it was too much. So I would try to do it like 2, maybe 3 times a week. But I finished a lot of drawers and cupboards and closets, and I just wish Goodwill was open.
Tanya said the same thing. Yeah, got all this stuff we want to get rid of now.
Yeah.
I got motivated this last weekend and did some baking. I baked a lemon chess pie and made some lemon sorbet, and Tanya says, "Can't you do any like cooking real food rather than just desserts and sweets?"
I have a wonderful neighbor, Shirley, and she and her granddaughters and her daughter, the day before Mother's Day, picked flowers from their garden and a few things from Trader Joe's that they got. But then they made flower arrangements and did driveway drop-offs with the flower arrangements to people that they knew and they thought would appreciate having flowers delivered. And they were beautiful. They called me. I went over and stood at a distance to see the beautiful arrangements, and you could just tell they were having such a wonderful time. And I think that just was something that they could do for somebody else that didn't cost a lot because the flowers were from the garden, and they made it so somebody else's day had something special.
Wow, that's really cool.
That's neat.
Harley and I both got arrangements, Cecily.
I bet you did. They're related, the heads.
We're related.
Yeah.
That's fantastic, and it's an activity that takes the attention off of you and it's directed outward to other people. It's such a healthy thing.
Well, and Dale mentioned games. One of my favorite activities when I worked at the assisted living, I was an activity coordinator. I never knew the game of Rummy Cube. And Rummy Cube was a super popular game. And it just became one of my favorite things to do. That and Yahtzee. I introduced Yahtzee. And it's a great game too, because you do have to add a little bit, Dale. There's a little bit of tracking. So games is a good idea. My goal is to get my husband to just with me play cribbage. He usually just only does it if we have people over, but I love cribbage.
That's great. Now, Bill, and I think a couple have mentioned, things of getting into the Word and devotions and that kind of thing. I just wonder, are there scripture passages that come to your mind that have been helpful to you over this last couple of months?
Well, you had some scriptures on the letter you sent, and I was reading in Psalm 63. It says, I have seen you in the sanctuary, and behold your power and your glory, because your love is better than life. My lips shall glorify you. I will praise you as long as I live, and in your name I will lift up my hands. I will be fully satisfied as with the richest of foods. With singing lips my mouth will praise you. On my bed I remember you. I think of you through the watches of the night, because you are my help. I sing in the shadow of your wings. I cling to you. Your right hand upholds me. Very comforting passage for me.
Yeah.
This verse that I'm going to share with you, I actually tried to memorize it last summer, and I loved it because it just reminds me that I need to be in God's word in the good times, so when the hard times come, I have that to fall back on, and I know who he is, and I can trust in him. So this is Jeremiah 17:5-8. Blessed is the man who trusts in the Lord, whose confidence is in him. He will be like a tree planted by the water that sends out its roots by the stream. It does not fear when heat comes. Its leaves are always green. It has no worries in a year of drought and never fails to bear fruit. And it's just such a good reminder that when we're in God's word and we are learning about him, that when the hard times come, kind of like now, this is a little bit of a hard time, that we can have confidence in a God that is just there for us, and he knows what's going on, and he is sovereign over everything. Nothing is taking him by surprise. And I really, I love that. And that's such a good verse for me to kind of meditate on.
I think peace is one of those things that we sort of grasp for. We'd like to, peace and rest sort of seem inextricably bound together. And I think it's important to note that peace is not the absence of stress. We can have peace even though there are stressful things going on about us. There's a couple of verses, one in the Old Testament and one in the New Testament. I think they're familiar to both of us. One is in Isaiah 26, where it says, "Thou will keep him in perfect peace, whose mind is stayed or set or focused on him. He will trust in God." I think that's an incredible thing. And part of that is a willful determination to trust in God. And just the determination to do that, I think, invites the peace of God. I think the other is be anxious for nothing, Philippians chapter 4, verses 4-6. Be anxious for nothing, but in everything through prayer and supplication with thanksgiving in your heart, let your requests be made known unto God, and the peace of God, which passes all understanding, which is beyond human comprehension, shall keep your hearts and minds. And the meaning of that is shall be a garrison against the enemy who wants to destroy your peace. Shall keep your hearts and minds through Jesus Christ our Lord. So I don't think we're not going to worry, or we're not going to have moments to be anxious, but we get to choose what we do with that. And the invitation is not to pitch our tent in the valley of worry and anxiety and despair, but to pray and to take our requests to God, because the reward is, he says he brings the peace that we would not otherwise experience apart from him. And I found that to be true almost daily when I trust the Lord.
That's great.
The one I'm thinking of, it's actually one I shared when I did a panel with Ken and Ben on joy. And it was funny because Ken had the same verse, and it's Psalm 118:24. This is the day the Lord has made. Let us rejoice and be glad in it. And it is literally before my feet hit the floor, I've said that verse. And Ken was very similar, because it's, for me, it sets my day right from the very beginning, that God has determined that this is another day for me living on earth, and carrying out his will. And what does that look like? It just gets my frame of reference right. And just the reminder that, yes, as Cecily said, he's sovereign. This is no surprise to him. And he wants others to come to know him, to know Jesus. So we've got the same assignment that we did before all this happened.
That's right.
Be a light to others during this time.
I think the series that we've been at Grace, so not I know some of you may be listening who aren't part of the Grace family, but would encourage you to go to our website and listen to the various messages on the Psalms. We've had the last 9 weeks have been on the Psalms. And yeah, the thing that I love about the Psalms is it's so real, and I think of the Psalms that we've been talking about over the recent weeks. So you have every emotion going, it's you're expressing frustration or fear. Sometimes it's, Lord, how long is this going to go on? And I think we probably all have had that go through our mind. When I'm afraid, all of these things, and yet the psalmist always kind of ends up focused on the Lord, so I just I love to spend time in the Psalms, just to sit in them, and you can one day go to Psalm 42, another day it's go to Psalm 13, but then you go to Psalm 18 and or Psalm 103 that's really up and positive. Psalm 13 is, when, Lord, or is it going to end? But they help us express our feelings, and what's so refreshing about it is the Lord, he wants us to be honest and open and real with him, and so the psalmist kind of gives us that freedom to do that.
I think there's a little exercise that can be equated with that, and I think it was alluded to earlier, and I think it's a great exercise to open the Bible and read a psalm, and then close your Bible and journal something that you remember from what you read.
No.
I try to do that often, to read the psalm, close my Bible, and then journal what I call a takeaway thought from that I'm going to try to carry with me throughout the day. I think that's a very, very helpful pursuit, and a way it sort of ingrains it. If I'm reading, not just to read, but purposely, because I'm going to glean something from this to carry with me, that direction and focus help us, I think, maybe retain something that can be a tidbit or a morsel of food that we feast on the rest of the day.
Dale, I'd like to take that and use that as the segue into a kind of our last little segment here. And that is, we've begun to see, or we think we're beginning to see, a loosening of the restrictions on public interaction, but it's slow, and it's going to be some months, and many of those who are listening are going to still be sheltered in place for a while. And so I'd like to finish our time, and we've already talked about some things, some practical ways to redeem the time and to kind of cultivate healthiness in us. But I'd like to kind of shift to a real focus on that. And I think, Dale, your first suggestion of taking a psalm and journaling, that's a fantastic starting point for us, because I'd like to talk about how can we work toward healthiness on a spiritual and emotional plane, physically. Are there ways that, even being sheltered in place, there's ministry opportunities? And again, some of you have touched on those things even in our discussion, but let's come back to them just to kind of leave people with some real practical ways to just make the most of whatever time is left here of being sheltered in place. So personal soul care, time with the Lord. Dale, your suggestion there of journaling was great. Are there other suggestions here in terms of that spiritual care, soul care?
One of the things, if I could say, because we have choir on Wednesday night, and I've been joining the prayer meeting earlier, and we just have a wonderful prayer meeting at church, and Leon Maxudian and Lorraine do just a wonderful job with us and pray so beautifully. And we talked, several of us mentioned the importance of praying. And this is one meeting per week where the sole purpose, as far as I know, the sole purpose is meeting together to pray. And when we went into this time, I asked Leon if he would mind if I would set up Zoom meetings to the prayer meeting. And I was very encouraged by this, because I spent time with several of the elderly population, senior citizens in our church, and taught them the mechanics and the technology of Zoom so they could join us in prayer. And it was a blessing to my heart to see them come and to just be a part of it. And I would like any one of you that people are out there that have access to computers and would like to be a part of this prayer and to be blessed. You bless your socks off. That's what they used to say, I think. But just to hear people praying devoutly, I would just ask that you contact me, and I'll put you on the invitation list, and you can come in, and we'd love to see you come. You'll also get a nice prayer list from the church each week that I send out.
What else?
I just signed up for the women's Bible study for this summer that's on Zoom. And it's kind of exciting because I actually don't get to do women's Bible study normally, because I do the children's portion of it at Grace. And so I'm just so delighted. They have a summer Bible study, and it's going to be on the book of John, and Jessica Jantos is in charge. And I tried to sign up for it and screwed it up. And so I just called her, and she put me on. It was so nice. So you don't really have to know how to do too much. You do have to have somebody help you with Zoom. But it is a way to do a Bible study, and I'm going to have Mom join me for it, and we're going to do it together. And so maybe somebody that is interested in that might be able to still join up.
That's great. I think Pastor Tim has his ongoing men's group that meets on Thursday mornings, and guys could get involved in that. I think Ron Hamley is also doing something. He's still teaching through it's Matthew right now, and so there, and then I know some of you are, hopefully lots of you are involved in growth groups, but it's one more way of just staying connected. It's kind of a dual thing, because you're staying in the Word, but also connecting with people, and both of those things are so super important.
I think the invitation to join in prayer is I just wanted to make a quick comment and then say something else. My mother is 96 in July. And when I have a need, she's the first person I call. This is the one thing that she feels. Mm-hmm. She sort of is in a seated most of the day, not very ambulatory, has a bit of dementia, but most of the time her mind is clear, and particularly when you talk about spiritual things. And so her ministry of prayer is incredibly important to me. So I don't think it makes any difference how old we are. That can be a vital part we play in the body of Christ. I would just say, and Kim asked me about this earlier, so I would just talk a little about how grandparenting can be challenging during a season like this, but yet how fulfilling it can be at the same time. Bev and I have 12 grandchildren, and they are scattered from Tennessee to Texas to the 8 that live here fairly close to us, although several of them are at college during a normative school year, though most of them are home now. But there's a couple things that I do. I write all of my grandchildren every Monday morning, all 12 of them, a personal note. It takes some time to sit down and text them, but it's a way that I intentionally stay connected with them. Bev and I also, Bev is one of the world's best bakers and cooks. Our kids love homemade macaroni and cheese. Pastor Tim and his family, the children particularly loved that. And so one day we called them up and said we would bring it over, and we did a drive-by, and they stood in their driveway, and we brought the food and got to visit with them. And so I think even though we're disconnected and we're trying to be careful to honor, the space that's important, we're looking for creative ways to continue to reach out to our grandchildren and stay in touch with them. And that brings us a lot of joy and distraction from, otherwise being self-absorbed. It's good for us.
I think Rick and Sharon Ernstrom do the drive-bys too with the grandkids.
One of the things that I've been doing that's been very successful, I have a 7-foot patio table on my back porch. And so when the weather's been nice, I've invited people over. We call them porch parties. And we have lunch or breakfast usually, because dinner's kind of windy and cold. But what I've loved is that people stay and they talk, and longer than they ever would have in the past, because they don't have anything else to go to. And it's just so delightful. And then my mom, we include her a lot in these little gatherings, but my mom she has carpeting in her garage. It's the neatest, cleanest garage you've ever seen. And she vacuumed her carpet, and then she put chairs and TV trays out 6 feet apart. And then she invited like 3 friends over for scones and coffee the other morning. And she's almost 90. And so she is like making it happen. She is doing a lot because she's social and she needs that interaction. And those people loved it, and it was safe, and she felt like that she was doing what she should do safety wise. But just having those people in your life is huge. And so anyhow, porch parties and garage gatherings and drive-bys, it's all really important.
And you guys are just illustrating how, there's a whole wide range of things. It's not all the same thing. It's not cookie cutter. It's, putting together flowers. It's having tea time or scones and coffee, writing letters, phone calls. It's the drive-by with the grandkids. There's so many things that we can do. We're not useless or helpless. These are great ideas, and I'm sure there are tons of other ways that we can use our time well in serving.
I think the only other thing I would say quickly is that, and maybe you'll do this, Al, that there are maybe we're talking to somebody who feels very alone, very disconnected, and I know that I'm really anxious and excited to have the opportunity to visit with anybody who feels alone and needs to connect and kind of be a good listener. And I think there are resources available through our church and through people like you see on this screen, where we would love to meet you and join you in this time maybe of adjusting to all the challenges of this season. So the Bible says that we're to bear one another's burdens, and we do that. We fulfill the law of Christ. This is an operational principle of the body of Christ to care for one another. So I look forward to having opportunity to do that with somebody who might be out there who's really feeling alone and maybe neglected.
And I will post a slide here in a minute with some contacts, the church phone number and email, but also each of us, our emails as well. And so people who want to contact maybe one of us or contact the church should do that. And that's one of the things, you should not feel like you can't ask for help. And so we're here and would love to be of help. I'm looking at the time, so we are kind of running a little tight now. We're getting close to the end, and there's one kind of special thing I want to get to. But before we finish this one area, and we've talked about soul care, and it's both an internal kind of thing as we feed our souls, but I mean, part of that is reaching out and ministering to others, and we've talked a little bit about that. I want to encourage people to also, and Dale, I think you mentioned it, and that is physical exercise. You may be limited in what you can do, but it's important to have whatever physical activity that you can. And those who are able to do more should do more. I've got neighbors across the street, they're older, they walk really slowly, but they get out and do 2 walks a day. And, we'll sometimes talk from, our 6 feet or 10 feet away, but they're out there regularly, faithfully taking their walks. And that's great. I was talking to Ray and Kathy Albrechtson, Ray this morning, one of our missionaries, and they thought they had caught COVID and had the antibody testing, and they tested negative. So they'd been sick, but so they're feeling like they have to be careful. But he gets out and they play pickleball. And so, I've been really, really fortunate the last couple of months that I've been able to, my daughter has done workouts with me 3 days a week. And so I've gotten my physical exercise in, and I've gotten time with my daughter 3 days a week for the last 2 months. So that's been really fun. But, in whatever way that you can, I think it's important that we're physically as active as we can be. That really plays into our well-being too.
Something I'd like to add, if I may, is I just think it's really important to try to eat leafy green vegetables and be having a healthier diet right now, because it will boost your immune system. Being out in the sun helps with that vitamin D, which is a immune booster. And I was just going to tell you, like, even for breakfast, I put spinach in our eggs. And at first it didn't sound too great, but you know what? It's really good. And I try to add a vegetable at breakfast. I have a vegetable at lunch and a vegetable at dinner. I'm really being intentional about it. And I go to the store and then I come home and I cut everything up or wash everything so it's set. So when we have a salad every day, because we were kind of gaining a little weight. We have a salad every day, and having all the bell peppers ready to go, all the lettuce washed and ready to go, that is the kind of thing that really kind of spurs you on to make it, because if you have to start from scratch on the whole thing, it's a lot of work, and you say, I'd rather have a quesadilla in the microwave. But I think that right now we really need to try to eat as healthy as we can and to get the sunshine, like you were saying, getting out. And I just think that having the citrus also is another piece. And we live in an area where we can get out. We can go sit in the sun. If we can't walk, we can go sit in the sun. So I say, do whatever you can so that you get your immune system boosted so that you're healthy and strong.
That's great. Yeah, and we've got lots of produce in our area too. So, all right, before we wrap things up, we've got kind of a special thing, and that is Bill has been making the most of his time and putting together little musical things, and he put together a men's quartet of Turn Your Eyes Upon Jesus. And so I wanted I thought that this would be a great way to kind of bring to a close our time. So Bill, you want to take the screen here? And
you bet. I was going to say that the 3 men that I I first of all cleared this with Al though, but the three men that I asked to be a part of this, they sent their part to me, and I put it together in a box and tried to get them singing the same words at the same time. And so it's a challenge, and it was fun, but it was really good for my brain. So here it is.
All right.
Give me just a moment till I get it queued up for you. You see it okay?
Yep.
Turn your eyes upon Jesus. Look full in his wonderful face, and the things of earth will grow strangely dim in the light of his glory and grace. O soul, are you weary and troubled? No light in the darkness you see. There's light for a look at the Savior, and life more abundant and free. Turn your eyes upon Jesus. Look full in his wonderful face, and the things of earth will grow strangely dim in the light of his glory and grace.
All right.
Good
Thanks, Bill, for putting that together.
It was a lot of fun.
Right, then your
Great.
cohorts were Ron Johnston, Tim Cleeth, and Kyle Lozier.
Yep.
Wonderful.
That was.
I think we're on to another one now, Al, just so just be
All right.
warned.
Okay, sounds good. I'm going to put up a slide with some contact information. And as you have a chance to take a look at that, we'll close up with a few closing comments here, and then we'll let you go. It's getting close to dinner time. We'll see if I can get my slide up here. All right, are you seeing that? Did that come up?
Yes.
Okay, great. Well, in a message some time back, way before the COVID-19 pandemic struck, Pastor Tim cautioned us into not slipping into resignation. And the funny thing is, I can't even remember the text or the series, but I've remembered that exhortation. Don't fall into resignation. It's simply it's easy to be resigned to a situation that you are powerless to change. And, that leads to complacency and a host of other negative attitudes of resentment, bitterness, and other things. So whatever our situation, let's be committed to redeeming the time, to making the best use of it. We were in Ephesians before COVID struck, and we remember the words of Paul in Ephesians 5. Look carefully then how you walk, not as unwise, but as wise, making the best use of the time, because the days are evil. Therefore, do not be foolish, but understand what the will of the Lord is. And the end of verse 18 is, and be filled with the Holy Spirit. And so I think those are words to think about. And we appreciate so much your joining us this afternoon for our discussion. Thank you to the panel, to Dale and Cecily and Emily and Bill. Appreciate so much you guys being a part of this. And you see that the email addresses there. You feel free to contact any of us, call the church or email the church. We do, if you need help, you want some help, encouragement, whatever it might be, we want to help. And so please take advantage of these resources. Well, we're going to stop by here and encourage you to join us next time for Help from a Hurting World. Normally it's Tuesday night at 7 o'clock, or 8 o'clock. But we had a special one today, and we hope that you enjoyed it and look forward to seeing you again. So have a great evening, and we'll see you again soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hang in there.